Good evening, I'm Talia Ricci. After weeks of protests, some pro-Palestinian university encampments are coming to an end. Earlier this week, students reached a deal with Oshawa's Ontario Tech University, and today students in Hamilton are packing up after reaching a deal with McMaster. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
This morning, we were disbanding the camp and we were packing up.
This McMaster University student didn't want to reveal his full name for fear of being targeted by those who don't approve of student encampments like this one. But he says he's happy to have reached a deal with the school.
And we spent countless hours in negotiation with the university. And if they weren't willing to hear us out, and if we weren't willing to negotiate to speak our demands, then none of these negotiation meetings would have happened. So it's a testament to both sides' commitment to open dialogue, and I'm glad they heard us.
McMaster has made several commitments, including developing a framework for human rights considerations and international agreements, inviting the students to join a meeting about its investment strategy, and annual disclosures of all direct investments. The university has also pledged up to $200,000 to support Palestinian academics and students under the school's Scholars at Risk program.
And we're going to make sure we hold the university responsible to stay committed to the demands they agreed to.
In the meantime, the encampment at the University of Toronto is still going strong.
We've known from the beginning that the U of T wants us gone. They've made that very clear.
Yesterday, U of T issued a trespass notice to the encampment on its campus. That came 24 hours after the university administration offered a deal to the encampment, which was later rejected.
So for the university to call its police on its own students and issue trespassing warnings and say that, we don't have a right to be here on this campus is truly quite ridiculous.
The university says if they don't leave by Monday morning, they could face academic consequences like a 5-year suspension or expulsion. But before that, student leaders will meet with the university administration at 5 p.m. on Sunday.
We view this as the first offer, actually, not the final offer, and so there's definitely room to continue to move forward.
As per the trespassing notice, those involved with the U of T encampment have been given until 8 a.m. on Monday to clear out. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
To the latest on the war in Gaza, there are strong hints that new ceasefire talks are on the horizon involving Israel and Hamas. Iris Mackler has more from Jerusalem.
What we have seen is an announcement in the past few hours that there were these meetings in Paris between the CIA chief, the Mossad chief, that's the Israeli Mossad chief, the Qatari prime minister, and they say that talks will resume. Next week, there's going to be talks between those same three parties and also Egypt, and then Hamas will be brought in. So that is, I suppose it is optimistic because we haven't seen any talks on this issue for more than 2 weeks. It's significant also because of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, order to Israel to stop fighting and particularly to protect the civilians in Gaza. And because that order was some 24 hours ago, and in that time we have seen continued fighting. Israel says it is finding more tunnels, finding more weapons of militants, and the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says that in that period there have been dozens more casualties, dozens more deaths of Palestinians. So if there were to be talks and if there was another way to solve this issue, this deadlock, it would be very welcome.
In a major announcement yesterday, Ontarians learned they'll be able to buy alcohol in convenience stores as early as this fall. And grocery stores that sell alcohol also learned that some of them will have to start accepting empties. As Lane Harrison explains, that's causing some concern from the industry.
It's the biggest change to alcohol sales in Ontario since Prohibition, at least according to the Ford government.
People are excited they're going to enjoy the same choice and convenience as other Canadians.
Starting September 5th, up to 8,000 convenience stores will be able to sell booze. Plus, in August, grocery stores can sell ready-to-drink cocktails and cases of beer. But as part of the changes, some grocery stores will also have to start recycling empty cans and bottles starting in 2026.
If you can imagine, when you go to the beer store today, there's a lot of infrastructure in place right now that lets you bring that back. That's not how our grocers are set up here in Ontario. So that's the big problem with the announcement.
Beer stores will keep taking back empties until 2031, but starting in 2026, any licensed grocery store that is not within a 5-kilometer radius of a beer store will be required to do it themselves. The Retail Council of Canada says grocers are missing things like conveyor belts and dedicated recycling backrooms.
I was looking at some maps earlier, and I mean, there's already a decent number of stores caught out where mean, you physically can't build any infrastructure in time to be a part of this.
Meanwhile, environmental advocates are welcoming the news.
Great news. The beer store runs one of the most successful recycling programs, if not the most successful recycling program in Ontario. And so knowing that that is going to stick around and that also it's going to be expanded so that we're actually seeing the retailers that sell beverage alcohol having to take these containers back, I think that's a great thing.
As more stores are poised to be recycling empty beer cans and bottles, Environmental Defence thinks the province should go one step further by bringing non-alcoholic drinks into the fold.
Other provinces that have deposit return systems for all beverage containers are able to achieve return and recycling rates of anywhere from 75 to 85%. Meanwhile, in Ontario, where we have the blue box, which is where we put our non-alcoholic beverage containers, we're only able to achieve recycling rates of about 50% and sometimes less.
The idea is something the Ford government has floated, with a working group on the subject convened last year, but no official announcements have been made. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
In just over 2 weeks, Mississauga residents will elect a new mayor. Campaigns were busy this weekend rallying supporters to vote early. Clara Pasica has more from the campaign trail.
Signs like this one are all over Mississauga, encouraging people to vote in this June 10th mayoral by-election. Now, for these 20 campaign teams, this weekend is really kind of a dress rehearsal for the big day on June 10th, you could say. That's because advanced polls are open Friday and Saturday, but only at the Mississauga Civic Centre. So campaign teams will be trying to hustle up as much of that vote, get it in the bank as soon as they can. But next weekend, there's going to be 22 locations available to vote. So that'll be really the chance to really pull in those early voters. And many of these teams will be really hoping to get voters as enthusiastic as this one.
In Mississauga, like 20% was the turnout in our last mayoral election. And a lot of young people have turned 18 since that last election. And so I think this is a real opportunity right now for young people to have their voices heard and go to the polls.
Now, voters are carrying with them all sorts of issues this campaign. Here's a taste of what voters are telling us.
The seniors need a lot more support, and we'd like to see more people aware of that.
I'd love to see more infrastructure for cyclists like me, perhaps, who are not very confident cycling on the road but still love to cycle.
I would improve public transport for sure, like making bus times more frequent and also like more punctual.
Improve transparency and communication between the residents of Mississauga and the government.
So if you live in Mississauga, make your plans for next weekend if you want to vote early.
Toronto police are searching for 2 suspects after shots were fired at the Base Hayamushka, a Jewish girls' elementary school in North York.
Suspects arrived at the school in a vehicle, a dark-colored vehicle. They exited the vehicle and opened fire at the school, causing some damage to the front of the school. The suspects then got back into the vehicle and left the area. There were no reported sound of gunshots at the time, and there have been no reported injuries.
Police are assuring residents that community safety is a priority and say there will be an increased police presence in the area. Premier Doug Ford called the shooting a gross display of anti-Semitism. He says every student deserves to be safe at school. Police are asking anyone with information to contact them. To the Niagara region now, where a Toronto man is dead after a flying tire smashed into a coach bus on the QEW.
This collision was a result of a wheel coming off of a passenger van, striking a pickup truck, and then going through the windshield of a coach bus. As a result of this wheel off striking the coach bus, a 48-year-old male from Toronto was pronounced deceased at the scene.
The collision happened Friday afternoon near the Garden City Skyway Bridge in St. Catharines. Great Canadian Coaches says the tour bus was en route to Toronto from Niagara Falls when the loose wheel burst through the upper windshield. A tour director was fatally struck by the tire. OPP says 3 other passengers on board the coach bus were seriously injured. No charges have been laid so far, and police are asking for any witnesses to call Burlington OPP. York Regional Police are investigating after a string of shootings outside a Richmond Hill cinema. The theater near East Beaver Creek and Highway 7 has been the target of 3 shootings in the last week. The latest one happened early Friday morning after a passenger in an SUV fired multiple shots at the cinema, shattering the entrance door. Police say the theater was also the target of 2 drive-by shootings on May 17th and 19th. No arrests have been made, and police are asking anyone with information to contact them. Sophia Kambalia joins us now for a first look at the forecast and a bit of an interruption today to that string of beautiful weather we had recently.
Yeah, the garden and the plants were happy. It always seems like the rain comes when you have all your plans on this Saturday. The good news is your Sunday will be glorious. Let's look back at that big slug of rain that came everywhere from Timmins to the Windsor area. Heavier convective showers, especially in the Golden Horseshoe and into the Niagara region, as we saw throughout the breakfast and lunch hours. That rain is just moving through parts of eastern Ontario and the nation's capital as we speak, but let's zoom in here. A few little pop-up scattered storms are looking to form somewhere between the London and the Hamilton area. If we get enough clearing right now and enough afternoon and evening sunshine, we could have enough storm energy to support a couple severe storms anywhere again, London to Hamilton to Niagara. Hail and strong wind gusts would be the threat, but maybe that rain has wrung out the atmosphere just enough. Next air mass coming in will be warmer. That means warm air mass over the colder lakes, fog into your Sunday morning hours after what will most likely be a beautiful sunset this evening. That warmer air mass will bring your glorious Sunday conditions to you, but it doesn't last long. Sunday morning, mid-teens, Sunday afternoon, the mid-20s, and then Sunday evening, we start to see the next Colorado low creep up. I'll tell you about what this means for a wet, wild, and potentially stormy Monday on the horizon in the long range, Talia.
A massive landslide in Papua New Guinea has left villagers frantically digging through rubble for survivors. Authorities fear the number of dead could be in the hundreds. Philip Lishanik has more.
Mountain, you come down now.
In the aftermath of a landslide early Friday morning, villagers captured the chaos on their phones as they scrambled to rescue those buried beneath rock and dirt. Rescue efforts continued through the weekend as people dug to free those trapped, while others watched, dazed and in shock. Drone footage shows a huge ravine cleaved into Mount Mangalo. The rock and earth fell on at least 5 villages in a remote northern province in Papua New Guinea, about 600 kilometers northwest of the capital, Port Moresby.
This is a massive destruction that took place. Everyone were fast asleep, not knowing that anything could take place, and they were fast asleep.
Entire villages were covered in rubble, homes crushed, hundreds may be dead, thousands missing. Local leaders made a plea: large machines are urgently needed.
We're asking the national government or whoever that wish to help, please, we really need your help.
Prime Minister James Marape ordered immediate search and rescue operations, but conditions are still dangerous.
The soil is still moving. It's posing high increased security risks, not only for the rescue teams, but also for other villages and communities living down the stream.
The landslide also blocked the main highway to the area, slowing the arrival of medics, military, and aid agencies.
People are buried under a debris of 6 to 8 meters. And every minute that passes is decreasing our hopes and increasing our frustration.
While villagers can get images of the devastation out, ways into the remote area are limited.
We're really just trying to keep in touch with what's going on to hear what it is we could possibly support them in. But until they get into the area, the only other access likely is a helicopter.
Officials say landslides are uncommon in this area, but there have been tremors recently, and the changeover to a La Niña weather cycle has brought heavy rains. Philip Lishanik, CBC News, Toronto.
At least 6 people were killed and 40 injured after a Russian attack in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. Officials say more than a dozen people remain unaccounted for. Alison Northcott has the latest.
Flames and plumes of thick black smoke engulf a hardware store in the city of Kharkiv as firefighters work to extinguish the burning rubble. In Employee Dmytro Sirotenko says the store was full of shoppers when the strike knocked him and his colleague to the ground. He says they hit the floor, were covered in rubble, and dug their way out. Ukrainian officials say 2 Russian-guided bombs hit the store, killing several people and injuring dozens more. Not long after, officials say several more people were injured in another strike in a residential area. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the strike, calling it another demonstration of Russian madness. Zelensky offered his sympathies to the victims' families and said Ukraine needs help from Western leaders to beef up air defense systems to protect Kharkiv, which has been the target of Russian attacks for weeks. Russian officials say there was also an attack by Ukraine inside their borders, killing several residents.
There's a lot of messaging that's going to take place both militarily and diplomatically and politically.
This former official with Canada's National Defence Department says these latest strikes come ahead of a planned peace summit in Switzerland next month that Russia isn't a part of.
There are 2 tracks underway. There is the military track, the grind, the fighting that will continue. Each side will pressure, cause attrition, exhaustion on the other side to put themselves into a better negotiating position, if you will.
The international conference in June is meant to chart a path to peace, but Russia has said any talks without Moscow's participation would be a waste of time. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Washington.
Finance ministers from some of the world's leading economies are meeting in Italy. On the agenda is how the G7 might be able to use frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine. Megan Williams has more.
So the final G7 finance minister's statement was cautious and lacking details when it addressed the issue of how it would use frozen Russian assets, most of which are here in Europe, to help Ukraine. They committed to the concept and finding ways to do it, but it's really not clear yet how they will do it. Now, the U.S. is pushing for that help to Ukraine to take the form of loans, that they will loan Ukraine the money. It desperately needs it to pay for weaponry and other things. And Ukraine would pay it back using the interest on these hundreds of billions of dollars of frozen Russian assets. Now, Russia, of course, is not happy about this. It calls the move illegal, and it says if it goes ahead, it will retaliate. It's already taken over Western businesses that operate in Russia. The other issue on the agenda was China and its flooding of the market, foreign markets, of inexpensive products. China subsidizes a lot of its products, the Chinese government, and the U.S. and other countries accuse it of unfair trading practices. Now, the U.S. last week introduced a series of new tariffs against a lot of these products, but Europe is less committed to it. There was a call for unity, and in the final statement they said they are unified, but Europe is not ready to get into a trade war with China, which it really fears. The other 2 issues, a billionaire tax, a global billionaire tax, which was pushed by France, and a global tax on corporations are in the final statement, but it's unclear whether or not those issues will go forward. They were sort of kicked forward to mid-June when the leaders of the G7 countries will meet in southern Italy. Megan Williams, CBC News, Paris.
Sophia's back now with our extended forecast, and I like the sounds of that sunny Sunday coming our way.
Yeah, enjoy it while you can, because it's, what did I say, a wet and wild Monday. We're seeing the rain still pass through that we saw earlier through the Timmins all the way to the Ottawa area. Light showers still remain. The chance of some afternoon and evening storms still in parts of the southwest. Beautiful sunset on tap for this evening, and then fog for pre-dawn into Sunday. Let's take you back through this glorious Sunday. As I have prefaced, Sunday morning, mid-teens, the mid 20s with just a tiny bit of humidity for your Sunday afternoon. And then Sunday evening, you'll start to see this next system, a Colorado low, begin to creep up throughout parts of southwestern Ontario. That's where you could see a scattered rumble of thunder Sunday evening. It's part of this Colorado low that's actually going to be bringing tornadic activity overnight tonight and into tomorrow. Stateside, we will get the northern edge of this system, mostly a deep low pressure system with lots of rain. Look at the wind that this system will bring though Monday afternoon and evening, morning hours throughout parts of the GTA, evening hours, that deep low pressure into the Ottawa Valley, winds anywhere from 40 to 60 kilometers an hour, along with some potentially heavy rain for Monday. Sunday afternoon, there's a look at just a little bit of humidity for you there. The next 7 days continue to be quite wet all around the region. This is great as we're entering the forest fire season to alleviate some of that early risk. Great for some of the gardeners as well. Not so great for any of the early weekly cottage plans. Look at this, showers linger Tuesday and Wednesday, and then really we are seasonal for the rest of this upcoming work week. Many of you will notice a difference though with this past week of steamy and sultry weather. Look at some of these overnight and early morning lows, just single-digit lows for many of you. You will be running for that sweater into the early morning hours, but again, looks dry into next weekend at least, Talia.
Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
An old concrete trail at the Toronto Zoo has been retrofitted into an accessible boardwalk.
The zoo is a place where everybody visits, and we weren't doing as good a job as we wanted to with folks who were differently abled, and we had a unique opportunity with this retrofit to solve that.
The new walkway was named after former Lieutenant Governor David Onley, a champion of accessibility policy in the province. A second accessible boardwalk is expected to open at the zoo later this summer. Finally tonight, some of Toronto's hidden gems are once again open to the public with the annual return of Doors Open weekend.
Visiting new buildings and the history of the buildings are one of my things, my cup of tea. So I think that's the reason I also go and visit.
Fun to just go around on the days when it's not raining, and hey, a lot of money savings, so you can go to the places. Plus you get to go to the places which might not be open on the other days, so that's fun.
The rain didn't stop these Torontonians from peeking behind the curtain and visiting some of the city's most iconic buildings for free. Over 160 cultural, historical, and architectural sites are part of this year's program. The annual event is in its 24th year and runs until tomorrow at 5 p.m. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks